So, good day everyone. I'm John, moderator for this webinar. Welcome everyone for today's webinar. FDA Food Safety Modernization Act, FSMA, rules on the sanitary transportation of human and animal foods. I would now like to introduce our presenter for today, Dr. John Rand. Dr. John Rand holds a PhD in research and statistical methods. I would now like to one of the best speaker of ours. Over to you, John.
All right, thank you very much. Welcome, folks. Going over these rules, which were passed and signed into law in 2016. So today, our agenda, we're going to try to understand the new law for the sanitary transportation of human and animal foods. We're going to look at the changes between the proposed rules and the current rules, the final rules. And I'm going to talk about the different requirements for shippers, carriers, and receivers. So you got to figure out, where are you in the supply chain? Are you a shipper? Are you a carrier? Or are you a receiver? And I'll define those for you. Some people have exemptions or can qualify for them, but it's not easy. And there's some waivers requirements if you want an exemption. I want to talk about contracts of carriage. I want to talk about food safety hazards a bit and how to prevent some of these hazards, because that's the name of the game throughout the whole FDA system, right? Preventing hazards. This is how it all started. There was a 1994 outbreak of salmonella. There's links if you look at my slides, by the way. Okay, the FSMA, the entire Food Safety Modernization Act, of which this set of rules is a part, covers everything farm to retail. All right, we have provisions in here for secure electronic data sharing. Okay, under FSMA, you're responsible for developing. Your FSMA demands that there's a comprehensive system preventive strategy that involves all participants in the food system, domestic and foreign, doing their part to minimize the likelihood of harmful contamination. Okay, so what does this require from you? First of all, you need to look at the types of food you have to determine what hazards can potentially impact them. So this plan that you have in your company now must be signed, reviewed, and updated by the owner, operator, or person in charge of the facility when changes are made. Okay, so what are you looking for in terms of food hazards? There's three kinds here: bacteria, chemical hazards, that's insecticides and herbicides, and other kinds of physical hazards: glass, wood, paint, chips, mold, etc. And then we have other things like allergens. All right, so Title I, improving capacity to prevent food safety problems, another law. Okay, let's talk about the law now. I went through a lot of background stuff. The law under Food Safety Transportation is established to prevent practices that create food safety risks. Little things like that you have to take care of. That when they wrote this law, there were 83,609 companies were impacted by it. How much contaminant comes from trucking or moving food around like that, okay? But they made the law anyway. And once again, look at the bottom of that slide, you'll see a link. The law, now I'm giving you specific pieces here, covers shippers, receivers. The railroad industry has a big problem with this. There's some exemptions to these rules. Receivers, shippers, or carriers engaged in food transportation operations that have less than $500,000 in annual average revenue. Okay, so they're exempt from the rules. The transportation of live food animals, pigs, chickens, and that means you got to have inspection, maintenance, loading and unloading covered through all operations in a contractual agreement and have all the data. A bulk vehicle, food not completely enclosed by a container, this shelf-stable food, time temperature control for safety. So definition of a vehicle, a receiver means any person who receives the food after transportation. This is an important one, a container, and under the rules, qualified auditors to inspect food transportation processes. When that temperature goes up, bacteria grows. Okay, now, so we're talking about this flow of transportation operations. Supervisory personnel have to be competent. Protective measures. The shipper must inspect the vehicle provided by the carrier. And then in addition to that, you got to remember security, accident procedures, and recall. Shippers and receivers together must carry out loading and unloading operations. The shipper must specify to the carrier in writing sanitary requirements, verify that each freezer and mechanically refrigerated cold storage compartment. Carriers must demonstrate to the shipper, and if requested to the receiver, that is maintained temperature conditions. Trailer but it hasn't been cleaned, right? Carrier must provide training to personnel engaged in transportation operations. 12-month record retention requirement. Again, the feds can come in and grab what they want, when they want, anytime they want. You may apply for a waiver and you can have input from your receiver say the critical component of all this is prevention. Make sure everybody's trained, you have your record keeping. Okay, so there's some I talked about high risk foods. Look at the recall history and go to Codex. Again, preventive concepts, risk-based, reasonably appropriate procedures, practices, and processes that a person knowledgeable, and there's a difference between corrective action and preventive action, and the problem will return repeatedly. So you haven't prevented it. Set up improvement projects and make sure people are educated and trained. What are the temperature records for each load? Last but not least, don't forget to wash your hands. All right, thanks for attending, folks. This is John Ryan. Hopefully I'll get over this cold. Talk to you in another session.
Thank you everyone for attending. You may all disconnect now. Have a great day ahead. Bye-bye.